Tony, first of all, the changes.
Well, like you said, Guy, they removed Iraq from the list of 7 countries. It's now only 6 countries. One important thing that they did is the original order gave preference to people who were religious minorities. Many people said that favored Christians. And finally, they clarified the issue of whether Americans or foreigners with American visas could come back into the country. That's perfectly okay now.
It's likely that this will return to the courts in some shape or form.
Oh, sure.
So how does it change legally from a court perspective?
Well, there are 2 big things that happened. Those 2 other issues that we talked about. The big issue is, does this target Muslims or does it target national security? Which is the issue? And one of the problems the first time around was that religious preference issue. If it allowed people who were religious minorities, Christians basically, in those 6 countries, then it was looking at Muslims, not people from the countries. So that's one issue that's been taken away. And 2, the fact that people with visas will be allowed to come back to the country more easily, that takes away a legal criteria of harm. You need victims who are showing absolute harm, and people with visas who couldn't get back into the country were very good plaintiffs for the lawsuits. Now it might be more difficult to find a plaintiff who suffered actual harm.
Intent is important. Intent is important in all of this. The intention is still a little murky as to what is what the objective of all of this is. How does that change the landscape?
That's going to be the big question, and that'll be determined by what judges you get, largely.
Right.
Democratic judges will look at intent and say, you're now just looking at these 6 countries, you've trimmed away some of the religious issues, but what you said before will really be what's important. And you showed before that your intent, whatever the shape of the bill is, your intent is to keep out Muslims. But more strict interpretations of the Constitution will say, we're just looking at the document in front of us. The document in front of us doesn't have religious issues. So it'll really come down to what judges you get now.
Can you talk to me a little bit about process here? The first sort of iteration of this clearly was chaotic. The whole process kind of got out of hand very, very quickly. Are we learning that the authorities are learning from that mistake?
Certainly the Trump administration is trying to go about this much more carefully. There were no early morning tweets, at least there haven't until I've been here. Things change very quickly.
They sure do.
They had 3 officials go down in a very kind of low-key press conference to announce the change. There's 10 days to implement the change. It'll give the courts some time to look at it rather than emergency orders. It'll still be a very quick process, but you will get a little bit more reasoned time to look at it. And when anything does go into effect, if it does, which is an open question, there'll be time to train and implement it properly, and there won't be nearly as much chaos at the airports, we hope.